AITA for contacting the police after my mom left my siblings at my door. My name is Ethan, and for years my parents, Mark and Emily, treated me like an unpaid servant. Everything I owned was theirs, my younger siblings always came first, and my labor was simply expected. So, at 20, I packed my bags. When I left, my father, Mark, scoffed. "Don't let the door hit you on the way out." I'd been working full-time for 4 years, and I found the smallest, cheapest apartment I could. Barely a month later, their calls started, begging me to come back to care for my brothers. I refused, savoring my newfound freedom. But Mark was relentless. He insisted family came before personal independence, demanded I move back and pay rent. I stood my ground. "For once," I told him, "I'm living for me. My life matters too." We didn't speak for months. "Let's see how long you last without us," he'd sneered. I surprised them. I did just fine. Slowly, they began to patch things up, which really meant they finally accepted I wouldn't come crawling back. It was obvious they hated that I was in control now. Even though my 2 oldest siblings were in their late teens, my parents still constantly dumped the babysitting load on me, just like always. Their refusal to take responsibility felt like a slap in the face. When I dared to bring it up, they gaslighted me, then fell silent for months again. Of course, they eventually came back asking for help. One Saturday, I'd just bought a used gaming console. The only game I could afford was the one it came with. My mom, Emily, requested I watch my 2 youngest siblings for a bit. Before I could even answer, she practically shoved them into my tiny apartment and vanished. I was stuck with them all day. I called her, insisting she come get them, and she finally showed up after 10 p.m. She was clearly annoyed I'd interrupted her fun. That night, I laid down the law. I wouldn't watch them all day for free anymore. And if she ever left them outside my door again, I'd call the police and wouldn't even open it. The next morning, my gaming console was gone. I suspected one of my siblings, so I called my parents. My mom casually said it could wait, because my youngest sibling was playing on it, and she didn't have the heart to take it away. I was furious. This wasn't a request, it was theft. I told her it had been stolen without my consent, and I was coming to get it back immediately. I biked over. My sibling was crying when I arrived. The console's battery had died, and they couldn't find the charger. When I asked for it, my father, Mark, grabbed it. "You can have it back," he stated, "if you help out more with your siblings." I hadn't been bluffing. I told him if he wanted to play that game, I'd call the cops right then. He refused to back down until I actually started dialing. "Hold on," my mother shrieked. I quickly snatched the console back from my father. Emily argued it wasn't worth having the police show up, but Mark called her a traitor, demanding she give it back to him, not me. Before I left, I warned them. If this ever happened again, I wouldn't hesitate to call the police. If they wanted a console for my siblings, they could buy their own. My father, Mark, screamed that I couldn't treat him with such disrespect. I snapped back. "I'm an adult, but you've never bothered to treat me with any respect. I'm done." As I walked away, he yelled for me to turn around and face him. They've been silent again since. A while later, my mom, Emily, texted, pleading with me to watch my siblings. She wanted me to go back to doing it for free, especially after they stole from me and tried to prevent me from getting my own property back. I told her if she really wanted me to babysit, she could pay me up front. "I am not their property," I messaged. "They can either adjust or get disoriented. I'm an adult with my own place and my own life." More than a week has passed since that text. None of them have contacted me. And honestly, that's fine. They can handle their own mess. By the way, if you're still with me, make sure to hit subscribe. More unbelievable stories are coming. It's unbelievable that I completely forgot about this account for almost a year. But then I stumbled upon my original post while watching Reddit videos online and realized I never gave an update. So here we go. Fair warning, there's some fighting and police intervention toward the end, but I'm not sure if that counts as a trigger warning. As some of you might know from my last post, my parents refused to return my gaming console after my siblings stole it. Many commenters advised contacting the police or CPS if my parents ever dropped my younger siblings off at my door without asking again. I waited and waited, but it had been about 3 months since my mother last called, and I wouldn't watch my siblings for free. Then it finally happened. My parents called out of the blue, asking me to watch the kids, pretending the console incident had never occurred. I told them it had to be a day I was off work, and I wouldn't babysit unless they paid me. My schedule had changed. I no longer had Saturdays off, which was when they most frequently asked me to babysit. I actually had to ask my boss for that change. Plus, it was more cost-effective for me to take on an additional shift. As usual, my dad became enraged. He told me to man up and lend a hand, just like he supposedly did at my age. I pointed out that he should stop acting like he controlled me. Technically, I was manning up for myself and my own life. But he constantly dumped his duties on me and worked on Saturdays to escape them. As far as I was concerned, I was finished with their demands. My mother snatched the phone away from him when he started screaming into it. I stated I could only watch them on Sundays, my only day off, and only if I was paid $40 and their lunches, dinners, and snacks were prepared in advance. Feeding them wasn't my responsibility. I wasn't wasting my money on it. I also made it clear that if anything was taken from me, like my console last time, I would call the police. I still had the receipt and serial numbers, making it easy for authorities to verify it was mine. My mother became enraged, cursing like a sailor who'd just lost a tooth. She realized I wasn't answering and started insisting I say something. I let her vent, essentially ignoring the phone. Sundays only, $40 and prepackaged food, I repeated to her and my father on the other end. Or you can forget about it. There was a moment of astonished silence. My mother then blasted me again, claiming my younger siblings, who were 13 and 16, now had to take over for me because I was no longer there, and they needed a vacation. Oh, like how you guys gave me breaks? I asked, laughing like I never had before. My mother tried to claim things were different because I was the eldest. I explained to her that it wasn't different at all. I had lost out on so much of my youth because they had parentified me. It was beyond hypocritical for them to pretend I should take over again now that I was living on my own. The two teens living with them were perfectly capable of doing everything I used to do. My mother went into victim mode, saying my teen siblings were disobedient and unheard because I was too busy living my life. I informed her that their issues weren't mine, and they needed to find another daycare provider. My father returned to the phone, screaming at me again. He was just blowing hot air, not actually saying anything. So I just laughed. My mother retrieved the phone and begged me again. I restated, $50, prepared food, Sundays only, and I wouldn't hesitate to call the police if I received threats or had any belongings stolen. My parents began arguing loudly with each other about what to do, so I told them to figure it out and get back to me. I hung up. Radio silence returned for a time. A few weeks later, I was getting ready for work on a Saturday morning when I heard a loud, quick knock at my door. The kind where you can tell they're using both hands. I'd heard my mom knocking for years, so I knew that sound. After the banging, I heard what sounded like someone rushing noisily along the hallway. Then I heard my two youngest siblings arguing and tapping on the door themselves. My mom had just run off, leaving them outside. Because of all the warnings I'd received after my last post, I had a straightforward strategy. I simply rolled down my window, got out, and left. My ground-level apartment makes it easy to just rip the screen out and climb through. I called my neighbor, a kind elderly woman a few doors down who loves having children around. She's long been aware of my predicament with my narcissistic parents, and she called the police so I could inform them that two children had been left in the hallway after their mother beat on a door and fled. Let's just say my siblings were picked up by the cops later. I got a call from my parents, who were very upset. I asked them what they were so upset about, acting as though I had no idea. When I inquired if my mother had simply left my two youngest siblings at my door without anyone answering, she completely acknowledged she had left them there for me to watch before running away. She explained that I was already out because I had to work on Saturdays. After a few moments of silence, my mother screamed, "How in the world was I meant to know that?" I retorted that she was solely to blame, that she had practically abandoned her children at my door hoping I might have been home on a day I had repeatedly told her I worked. By forcing me to watch them, she was attempting to make me miss a shift. She started offering justifications, but I told her what she had done was unacceptable and immature. I waited for her to stop weeping for a while before asking if she was finished. She reverted to her hostile demeanor and kept shouting. She yelled that the police were charging her with child abandonment. I replied that wasn't really my fault since she left the children in the hallway. I also told her that if I had been at home and she had refused to come back for the kids, I would have called the police on her too, because I had already informed them that I now worked on Saturdays and didn't want to be forced to babysit anymore. She continued to argue pointlessly for the remainder of the call, which didn't really accomplish anything. In the end, my mom just received a fine and a slap on the wrist because she persuaded the police that she genuinely believed I was home. At least, that's what my next sibling claimed when he contacted me. The fact that she had to pay a fine should make her reconsider leaving children at my door and fleeing again, but I'm not sure how much it was. My dad was at work and said he didn't know she was going to leave my brothers at my door, so he wasn't charged. He was reportedly furious with my mother for doing it. I couldn't stop laughing at this pot and kettle scenario. However, I suppose I must give my old guy credit because he had never done what my mother did. In any case, my mom now has a police record, which is, in my opinion, a first strike in the eyes of the law. Thanksgiving was the turning point. After that, I completely anticipated my parents' invitation to be a trap of some sort. It was. My dad pretended to be in control, sitting at the table, smoking a cigarette during supper. He said enough was enough and that he was ending this farce. After having my mom sit me down, he informed me that they had no more time for themselves, and the fine my mom had to pay had a significant negative financial impact. So, I needed to return home, help with the bills and mortgage, and help raise my siblings. Regardless of how much he tried to command me, I just answered no, and I continued to do so. Even though he's a big man, he became so enraged that he actually attacked me. Fortunately, I'm not either. I'd acquired some amateur fighting techniques, and had been going to the gym for months. When he came at me, I kicked him quickly in the balls because I was wearing steel-toed boots, and then I struck him hard enough in the face that he fell to the ground in an instant. He landed with a loud thud and clutched his groin, vomiting from the pain. I then informed my parents that I could easily prove he attacked me first because I had my phone filming in my pocket the entire time. I complied with my dad's order to leave his house and never return, but not before stealing a turkey leg from the plate and riding home to eat it. The only people who have called or contacted me since are my siblings. I marched out like a boss, they claimed, and now Dad's poor balls are the subject of constant jokes in the house. I was invited to return for other holidays after spending Christmas with a friend's family. I now see why my parents attempted to have me return home for Thanksgiving. My mom was pregnant. I just learned that she was expecting her 6th kid. First of all, shortly after my last post, one of my siblings discovered my Reddit account and showed it to our parents. In response, my parents stormed into my apartment and yelled at me, accusing me of being a horrible person and of arranging for my mom to be detained. Yes, I yelled back. They are standing in my doorway. I screamed at them for all they had done, including putting my siblings at my door on a day when they knew I was at work. In any case, I told them, that is poor parenting. I would have called the police on Mom when she left the kids at my door anyway, so it didn't really matter that I set them up. It wouldn't have mattered in the end. I replied that behavior alone confirms my belief that they are bad parents. My dad appeared to be about to raise a fist in my direction. Then I said that if he tried to hit me, it would end the same way it happened the last time, and I didn't think my boots, yes, I was wearing them, could hit his balls again. When he remembered what I had done to him the last time, Dad appeared to wince and tense his legs together. In the end, he dragged my mother out by the hand and left. Before he left the corridor, he shouted back that since I was entirely to blame, he expected me to reimburse them for the fine they had to pay for child abandonment. I informed them that I owed them nothing and told them to screw off. They remained silent in response. I received some extremely horrible news not long ago. After a terrible incident at home, where she tripped on damp porch stairs and fell face down in gravel, my mom, who was about 7 months pregnant, lost the baby. To be honest, when I saw her before that, I had no idea she had been pregnant. She's always been awkward and a little heavier than average. Not fat, but just enough that it's hard to tell if she's pregnant or not. She definitely wanted someone to blame because this was her first miscarriage, which is heartbreaking. She thought I destroyed the family by not assisting them and by costing them a lot of money. So in her opinion, someone had to be me. She was on crutches when she and Dad returned to my place to accuse me of being the cause. I didn't come home to help when they needed me, she said. Thus she lost the baby. I called them out on their attempts to blame me for something that wasn't my fault and their need for free child care, which led to a quite heated debate. In any case, I assured them, it's not my fault that they became pregnant again when Mom was 45. Dad was too frugal to ever replace or repair the decaying old porch, so blame it on that. When I said that, My father put his hands on me once more and gave me a stinging right hook. I ultimately kicked his ass again. I've continued to train at the gym, and I've gotten stronger since defeating him during Thanksgiving last year. There was no chance for him. My mother's yelling forced me to stop when I lost my temper and broke his nose and knocked out both of his front teeth. My father needed to be transferred to the hospital, so the police were called, and I was placed in handcuffs. Fortunately, my apartment complex's halls are equipped with CCTV, and I also had my phone camera recording behind me in my unit. When my parents knocked, I began to record. The video clearly demonstrated that I defended myself after my father hit me first. Since it was deemed self-defense, I'm basically safe, but now my parents want to sue me for my dad's medical fees and the fine they had to pay earlier. I defeated Dad, so he won't be able to go to work for a while. He has 2 lost teeth, a black eye, a broken nose, a neck brace, and who knows what else. He is also really upset that he had to shave off his beard. I suppose this makes him even more dead to me, because I already thought he was pretty well dead before this. He no longer has the little authority he once believed he had as my father. Because of all the hard work I've put in over the past few months, I'm physically stronger than him and will soon be starting a new job that pays significantly more. I might be able to get a much better place to live after a few years of saving. When my oldest sibling turned 19, they called to tell me that I was their hero for beating the living daylights out of Dad and that they were going to leave just like me. However, my parents found out about my posts once my next sibling discovered them after hearing about them on YouTube. My mother apparently forced them to show her my post after overhearing them discussing it. They stated she broke items because she was angry. My siblings have expressed regret for letting Mom and Dad know, and they claim that if they had realized Mom was listening, they would never have brought it up. Additionally, both have expressed their happiness that there won't be another child. They already have to handle a lot of my parents' babysitting, which they detest. They acknowledge that they first blamed me for leaving, but they now understand that you have the right to choose your own path as an adult. Whether my parents will actually attempt to sue me is still up in the air, but I believe I can state that if they do, it will be a loss for them. My friend's uncle is a lawyer, and he promised to defend me in the event that my parents filed a lawsuit. He adds that since it was self-defense, they don't have much of a case. To my folks, who will most likely see this, leave me alone, please. That's all I have to say. My siblings and I are not your property, and I will assist them in leaving your home when they are old enough to do so at the age of 19. Both of you have always been self-centered egotists. It's not my fault that Mom lost the baby, and it's not my fault that you struggled so much without me around to watch your kids for free. Think of that smashed nose and missing teeth as a good excuse to avoid me in the future. Remember that because of you too, I have only told you a small portion of the nonsense that occurred in my life. I could share story after story about the events in my early years if I so desired. However, I wouldn't be satisfied with it, so please don't bother me. P.S. Yes, my mom had to give birth to a stillborn baby at the hospital, but I wasn't going to bring it up earlier. According to my siblings, my parents had a secret funeral among themselves, and Mom brought home a little urn that she keeps in the bedroom. After leaving with the urn for a few hours, they returned intoxicated. My mom spent over 6 days in the hospital due to whatever injury she sustained in the fall. I've contacted my siblings for further information. Someone asked if she had been shoved. I'm now doubting that myself. The only excuse I could come up with was that Mom was in a hurry to be somewhere when she slipped and fell off the porch. I've heard of folks suffering more severe injuries in more foolish ways. When I researched the cremation procedure, I found that it would take 8 to 12 days to obtain the ashes. This indicates that the urn they brought home was empty. I'm completely perplexed. However, my parents' funeral took place a few days after Mom left the hospital. Until the day of their small funeral, my parents kept that urn in the bedroom. They may have collected the ashes by then, I suppose. Perhaps it explains why they returned home intoxicated. But this situation is so strange and twisted that I'm having a hard time thinking about it anymore. Revisiting and posting again so soon feels strange. I mentioned in my last post that my mom had a recent miscarriage following a serious fall. I had a bad feeling about the information I was given. I concluded that going directly to the source was the only way to obtain the truth after reading all of the comments I had gotten about it. I visited my parents on Sunday. They both appeared to be in terrible shape and were at home sleeping. In addition to using crutches to walk more than a few steps, my mom appeared to be very exhausted. I saw that she had numerous bruises and bandages on her face from the fall. My father, to find out how he appeared, read my previous post's depiction of him following the thrashing I inflicted. When I arrived, my parents were blown away. I insisted on knowing if there was ever a baby, or if this was all a pathetic attempt to coerce me into returning home after what happened. My dad claimed I had a lot of guts to show there, and let myself in. However, my mother sobbed as she revealed that she had actually been pregnant. She stumbled into the bedroom and picked up a little urn that seemed really elaborate. It was filled with ashes. They didn't smell like anything. Even when I looked to see if they resembled cigarette or barbecue ashes, I didn't really smell anything at all. Even though I had looked online and saw that it takes at least 8 to 12 days to get the ashes returned, I questioned why they brought the urn home and said that the ashes were already inside. Mom had spent no more than 6 days in the hospital. According to my mom, they purchased the urn online with the hope of retrieving the baby's ashes. Upon visiting the crematorium, they simply waited till they could retrieve the ashes a few days later, and then went out to get drunk because they were so distraught that they couldn't bring the kid home yet. Mom said she begged the crematorium to do things a little faster. Her eyes were filled with real tears. Although I've witnessed her crocodile tears numerous times, this one didn't appear to be that. I learned more about my mother's fall and what transpired. She was late for her appointment with her physician, an OBGYN or whatever they are called. Mom clarified that she was attempting to get out to her appointment after oversleeping during her nap. Then, as she attempted to go down the stairs, she slipped on a toy. About 3 years ago, the porch's guardrails deteriorated and snapped off, and Dad never restored or repaired them. Mom had nothing to cling to. Then she fell straight off the porch, hitting the ground with her face and belly first. She even showed me the marks from her landing all over her stomach. She informed me that the child would have been a male. There would have been one more brother in addition to my 2 brothers and 2 sisters. Then Mom told me that because of her age and past injuries, a doctor advised her not to try to conceive again, since her body might not be able to take it. It wasn't any easier to hear in person, but I kind of assumed that was the case after some individuals messaged me about it. At last, I posed the crucial query. Why did she hold me responsible? Mom began to add something along the lines of, "The day they showed up at my apartment was just really, really bad." But Dad interrupted her. "It's all my fault," he screamed. "I would have been there to help if I had followed his advice and returned home for Thanksgiving, and now I'm responsible for the death of a baby." I screamed back at him, telling him that he was to blame, since Mom might not have fallen if he had actually bothered to fix the damn porch. Furthermore, not that it would have made a difference, he didn't even bother to inform me that Mom was expecting back at Thanksgiving. Instead of taking sides, my mother simply left the room in tears as we kept ranting at one another. My dad was so red that he looked like a lit match. He shouted for me to leave his house and waved his ancient hunting knife at me. He told me I was no longer his son. As I was leaving, he was always a bad father, so I informed him that I hadn't seen him as a father in years. I told him before I left that I would be requesting a restraining order and that he would have to deal with the authorities the next time he attempted to harm my siblings in the same way that he had done me. He will lose more than a few teeth, and if he attempts the same nonsense with my siblings as he did with me, I won't think twice about calling the police or CPS. He swore at me from the front door, saying things like, "You son of a." I retorted that that was a slight to Mom, and he became enraged once more. After that, I saluted him with one finger and rode off on my mountain bike. So I suppose that's the best response I can give someone. I'm not sure what the truth is if this isn't it. Does it matter now, though? As soon as possible, I'm going to file for a restraining order, and once I start earning money from my new work, I'll be seeking to transfer apartments. After this, I'm not sure whether I'll feel like updating again, unless my parents do something horrible to my siblings. I think I might be done here since I'm just going to be depressed thinking about all of this. I hope I've made my message clear to them. Even though I've already given Dad 2 beatings, he still held that knife with a hint of fear. He thought he was staring at a monster. Perhaps he views me as a monster, but if that means he never harms my siblings, then that's okay. He will be the monster. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you. Tell me, what would you have done in my place?